Okay, so it is October 28th, the week of Halloween, and today we are going to be making some Halloween candy bark. So one of the first things that we need to do is start prepping the chocolate part of this. Now you can use real chocolate, but you'd have to understand a little bit more about chocolate tempering and things like that. It's a little more advanced than what we're doing at the moment. So we are going to be using what they call candy melts today, right? Which is a coating chocolate. So these you can buy in stores that sell cake decorating supplies. So these are little like wafer kind of discs that you can do. I've got a little burner set up over here that I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to open up the package because I want to have about 1 pound of these candy melts. Okay. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting these into a clear glass bowl. You can use a metal bowl, right? I don't suggest using plastic because this is going to go overheat. Okay. I've got my little burner set up over here with some water in the pan. Okay, so this little pan that's over here has got maybe about 1/3 of the way up with water. Okay, and I've already had this preheated a little bit earlier just to make sure that the water is warm. So what I'm looking for is to have this barely even a simmer, just hot and steamy. I really don't want a full boil, so I will adjust the heat down as this melts, because I don't want the chocolate to burn, okay? So with these candy melts, melt them nice and slow, all right? So you wanna have it so that the bowl, which I'll show you here, is set up so it's bigger than the pan that it's sitting on, okay? You're also gonna wanna have a towel handy so that you can pick up the bowl off of the pot, right, when it's ready, and be able to collect any drips from the bottom of the bowl, because there's going to be some steam condensation that occurs there, and you don't want to drip that all over your workstation. Okay. Now, the other thing I'm going to need to add into this is just a little bit of shortening, right? So like crystal. All right. So I'm just going to add in about a good tablespoon's worth of vegetable shortening. Okay. Now, this is going to help loosen up the chocolate a little bit. Right, it's going to make it so that it's less grainy. Problem with coating chocolates is that they tend to get a little bit on the grainy side when you're working with them. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen. So this is going to heat up. I'm going to be able to keep an eye on that. That shortening will melt, and I'll keep stirring that in. Okay, I've got a nice silicone heat-resistant spatula. You could use a wooden spoon for this. I wouldn't use metal, right? Because the metal, especially if you leave it sitting in the bowl, that handle will heat up and it can actually burn your hand, okay? So use something that's non-conductive and that won't get too hot to hold, okay? But have towels and pot holders handy in case if something's too hot, okay? So we're gonna start with melting that. Now, the idea of candy bark is that it's a layer of chocolate, right, that you spread out. I'm gonna spread out most of it on a silicone mat, and then top it with a bunch of fun stuff, a little more chocolate, some more stuff, and you have big chocolate kind of design to it, right? And you can make this for any holiday. I'm using dark chocolate here today for the candy melts, but you could do colored ones. You could do white chocolate if you prefer that. So any flavor or color, that doesn't matter because these candy melts will all still work the same, okay? So what I've got is some fun stuff to put on top once this is ready. So the idea of this is while this is melting is get all your stuff laid out and ready to go, okay? So what I've got here is I've got some little candy eyeballs. Okay, so I'm gonna throw a few of those in. I've got some purple sprinkles that have little witch hats and circles and things like that. I've got some candy corn, okay, and some traditional Halloween sprinkles, right, with the black and orange. And then what I'm going to add in is some pretzel pieces and some Oreos, okay? So with the pretzels, you can use the pretzel sticks or pretzels like these, right? What I want to do, though, is break these up. I don't want a whole pretzel on there. I want this, so each piece has a little bit of everything to it, okay? So the best way to do that is just to break them up by hand, right? So I don't want too small of chunks, but I don't want a whole piece, okay? So if you have the little pretzel sticks, maybe break them in half, right? And the reason for the pretzels is this is gonna be a lot of sweet, a lot of chocolate, right? I wanna have a little bit of salt in there to balance out the flavor, right? And if you've never tried chocolate covered pretzels, you've got to try it because you get that salty sweet, and it really does balance out the flavor well, okay, for desserts and snacks and things. So we're just going to break those up. I'm going to stick these to the side, and then I got my pretzel pieces ready to go. Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the chocolate over here and stirring it. I will show it to you, obviously, when it's melted in just a sec. It's getting here. It's starting. Now, you know, any kind of sandwich cookie, so, you know, Oreo brand or whatever you've got at home, you want to take some cookies, but we want to chop these up ahead. Okay, so I want to have these ready to go. Look at that, one. One's already broken. Now I am still watching the chocolate here. Okay, I just turned the heat down a little bit because it was getting a little too hot. Right, so I'm just going to stir this. Just let that keep doing its thing. So I've got that flame on nice and low. Okay. Now with the Oreos, like I said, you're going to take your cookies and you just want to chop them up into some chunks, right? We want a more manageable size piece. Shift the bowls around. So empty bowl here. So I've just got my chef knife. I'm just going to rough chop them, right? They don't have to be pretty. We just want pieces. Okay. The nice thing is these break really nice and easily. Make sure you get all those little bits that can be layered on top. So this is what makes it fun. So if you have other cookies in the house that you want to add them in. You know, maybe you got some vanilla wafers, or you get a different kind of Oreo, right? It is really just using up, you know, whatever you've got in the snack cabinet, right, that you're hiding. Maybe you want some little Chips Ahoy cookies or something like that. Okay. So we're going to take our cookies into the bowl. So that's why I've got everything set up ahead, because once this chocolate gets poured out, it is going to be a very fast process. Okay, so we're just going to set that to the side. Now we're still melting this here. All right, so I'm keeping an eye on that. It does take a few minutes to melt. Like I said, I'd rather do it a little bit more slowly than too fast, because we don't want this to burn, right? If it gets that burnt taste, the chocolate gets really grainy, and it's not going to make a really nice bark. So I'm just going to let that do its thing. Now I'm going to set up where I'm going to be putting all this, right? So I have all these toppings and things all ready to go. I need something to put it on, okay? So I am going to use a cookie sheet pan with a Silpat silicone mat. Now, if you don't have these, you can do this on parchment paper. You could do it on wax paper. You can do it on the cookie sheet itself if it's a nice non-stick sheet, okay? We're going to be taking this afterwards and getting it good and cold before it gets broken up into pieces. So it will pop off of the cookie sheet pan. But it just makes it a little bit easier to lift the mat up and to kind of let the mat do the breaking for the bark. And that idea of, you know, candy bark is that it can be made in many different forms. You know, in different toppings. You could add nuts in and things like that as long as nobody's allergic. All right, so this is getting it. Now we're melting. And the edge of this bowl is not too high. It's slightly warm. Like I said, but you want to watch out when you're stirring in things that the steam coming up off the side. So I tend to tip the bowl to one side so the steam comes up off the back. I don't want to have too much steam from this water boiling either, because if that water gets into the chocolate, it will seize the chocolate, okay? Chocolate and water are not friends, right? That's why I'm not adding water in to thin my chocolate. I added fat in, okay, like the vegetable shortening. You could also use, you know, a butter flavored shortening and things like that if you want to give it a different flavor. But you want to stick to something that's got a fat base to it, especially if it's real chocolate and not candy coating. So this is almost melted. All right, there. Still got a few little lumps, okay? But see how nice and shiny. And that's the advantage of the candy coatings like this, is that you don't have to learn how to temper it like real chocolate, and you'll get that nice shine every time that you make something. So you'll see that I'm scraping the sides of the bowl. I'm scraping the bottom, right? And I'm just stirring slowly. I want to make sure I'm not getting too much air in there because I don't want big air bubbles. So I'm not really folding the chocolate. I'm just kind of stirring. That's looking perfect. Like I said, so it went from being really lumpy to super smooth in like a minute. Okay, so that's why you don't want to leave this unattended either, because next thing you know, the chocolate could start burning. Okay. All right. You ready for this? Okay, so we are going to take and tip you down here. Make sure we got enough light. You can see everything. Like I said, we've got the silicone mat, cookie sheet tray. Make sure it's a tray or something that you can fit into your freezer or at least your refrigerator, right? So that way it's not too big, because that's how it's going to set up, because we need to give this a quick little chill for about 15 minutes afterwards to get it to set up properly. All right. So with the towel, I got the towel underneath the bottom of the bowl here for a second, right? When I pull it off, because I want to get all that condensation off. I don't want that water dripping on my mat and getting into my chocolate. So now what I'm going to do is come in and take about half of this. Even slightly more than half is fine. You don't have to measure it or anything. Set that back on the pan to keep it warm. And I have a cake spatula, right? You could do this with a knife. You could do this with a small rubber spatula, but it's nice to have something that you can spread it out with. Okay. So I'm going to start to spread this out. So just nice and gentle, right? Think of like ocean wave. And I don't want to get too thin, right? Because then the bark will be really brittle. Somewhere about 1/4 inch thick. And it doesn't have to be a perfect shape of any kind, because this is all going to get broken into pieces. And now I've got this. I want to put down my cookies and my pretzels. All right, so I'll come in quickly. This is where you got to be fast, because this chocolate is warm and melty, but it's not going to stay that way for long. Okay. Too many cookies. So press them down a little. Make sure that they're adhering. And then come in between with your pretzel pieces. Make sure it's sticking to something. Okay, that's the biggest thing, is you want it to stick to the chocolate. But I am going to drizzle some more chocolate on top to help bind these in. Something on the edge there. Okay. So you want to work quickly, but efficiently. Okay. And we're going to add in a few pieces of candy corn. Save my sprinkles and things to go on the top there. Right, and this is not everybody's favorite, so you don't have to put these. You can put in a different candy, right? Maybe you've got some Kit Kat pieces. You want to do peanut butter cups. Okay. That looks pretty good there. So now the next part is to come in and drizzle a little bit more of that chocolate that's left on top. All right, so I'm taking this back off the heat and wipe my bowl again, just to make sure I'm not dripping anything. Then I'm going to come in, especially where I have some of these bigger pieces. Looks like it needs a little more structure, right? So some of this stuff will get hidden a little bit under the chocolate, but it's like a little surprise inside, right? And I can use my spatula then to spread out the extra chocolate on top. So this is why you wait to put the sprinkles on, because if I put the sprinkles on before, I would cover them up too much and then lose that effect. Now I'm going to come in, spread some of this out. Right, I'm using this as a glue, right, to get those pieces of pretzels and cookies and things in there that might be sticking a little bit too much. Okay. It doesn't have to be pretty. That's the thing. Right? Remember, this is a messy job, so have some paper towels handy. Check out right here. No licking your fingers if you're touching the food. So now I'm going to come in and do some sprinkles. Some Halloween colors, black and orange. And I'm going to add in purple because that is Chef's favorite color. So, and I think it really stands out and kind of gives a pop on that chocolate background, right? And then the last fun thing that we're going to add in is those little candy eyeballs, right? So it is best to try to put them somewhere in a pair. And these you can find, like I said, cake decorating supply stores and things like that. You know, retail stores. Anywhere that sells, you know, Halloween baking supplies and things like that, right? So let's put those in a few spots. Like I said, you're working pretty quickly. This is still fairly soft. You can see it's trying to stick to my fingers, right? So you do have time to do this part, especially when you do that second layer of chocolate, right? You can see the fun of that, right? So look at that, right? The little eyeballs, the purple, the orange, right? You've got all the colors in there and things. Now at this point, this needs to go into the freezer so that way it can set completely. So about 15 minutes or so. What you're looking for is that it totally sets up, okay? And that it can be broken. So I'm going to stick this in the freezer, and then I'm going to come back. I have one that's already done to show you. All right. So you want to make sure that you have space in your freezer for that, so that way it can fit the pan. All right. And then this is the finished item. Okay. So what you do after it's set and cooled is you just take them and break them up into some chunks, right? And this is what you would give people, you know, just put them on a plate, right? Get a little bit of everything on there. Your candy corn, your Oreo cookies, right? Your little eyeballs. This one's only got one eyeball, but that's okay, right? So it's fun. So you can take and you can mix and match any kind of ingredients with this. It doesn't have to be exactly as I showed you. This is just kind of go through your snack cabinet and see what you have in the house, right? But candy bark, it is definitely a sugar boost, right? So don't eat the whole thing, you know, make this to have somebody to share it with, okay? So that is our Halloween candy bark for today.